In part 1 of this science of identity, we look at the question of our identity. What is my essence? Who am I? To answer this age-old question, perhaps we could all ask ourselves: 1. Do I exist at the moment? 2. Did I exist 7 years ago? 3. Am I my body? Many people would answer yes to these 3 questions. To begin with, the ancient yoga texts and past and present saintly persons clearly teach us that there are 2 energies in this world, life and matter. That we are like individual sparks springing from a fire, and because of our independent freedom of choice and actions, we have been impregnated into our various material bodies, which are made of matter. Whenever you look into a mirror and see the reflection of your body, you may see it as brown, or young, or getting older. It may reflect as a dark male, or a white female. Whatever the image shows, you can question: is that me? How you identify yourself will manifest in how you live your life, and this is why, since ancient times, people have pondered this age-old question of, who am I? When 2 people meet for the first time, they will often identify themselves to each other by the labels of their nationality, their occupation, maybe their marital status, if they are a parent or not, what activities they may like to do, their intellectual achievements, and perhaps the age of their body, the car they drive, where they live, and so on. A lot of people actually relate to themselves as being the material body that they are in, as well as the labels attached to it. But you are not these labels at all. For example, if a person filled out an official form many years ago, then he would have written down the details of who he was, based on the labels he went under: his name, gender, nationality, date of birth, residential address, phone number, email address, his marital status, and the number of his dependents. Even other details such as his occupation, his religious or political convictions, and so on may be required. Now, if 6 years later, the same person was to fill out the exact same form, and you had them both before you, then you might be forgiven for thinking that it was 2 different people who had filled out those forms. It is possible for a person to change his name, and even his gender can be changed in this day and age. If he lived in another country during that period, then he may now have a different nationality. His address and contact details can change, and if his wife and children have been killed in a car crash, then even those details would now be different. Even the way the person now writes may be different due to injuries. The only thing that may remain the same would be the date and country of birth. So practically speaking, if a person is thinking that he or she are the labels that their body has, then they are an illusion, because all of these things can be changed in time. Most people who take birth in this world come under the illusion of thinking that they are the body that they are living in. They think that the material body is the self. In this animation, we can see everything in the body through transparent skin. We can see the muscles, bones, internal organs, and so on. There are many separate parts of the body that can easily be surgically replaced by parts from other bodies. So, if a person is thinking that they are the body they are in, then what part could a person point to and say, this part here is the I or the me? Scientists inform us that about 98% of all the atoms in your body are replaced every single year. That your skin, which is just one organ, is not the same skin that you were wearing 1 month ago. And you get a new liver approximately every 6 weeks. The lining of your stomach is replaced in 5 days. And the bones that support your body today are not the same bones you had a year ago. Also, recent studies clearly show that the molecular population of any given nerve cell, and this includes brain cells, is renewed every 3 to 4 days. The brain you had a week ago is now gone. Through modern surgery, we can receive a heart, kidneys, stomach, lungs, spleen, intestines, a liver, bladder, veins, marrow, and blood from another person's body, so they cannot be me. The 5 senses. These material bodies that we have been given are governed by the actions of the 5 senses and the mind. The tongue we use for tasting and talking, and is known to be the most difficult to control. The nose we use for smelling and breathing through. The eyes we use to see the huge variety of things that are appearing in this world. The ears we use for hearing. This is usually the last sense to stop working just before death. Then the sense of touch, which we use to feel with. The ancient yoga analogy of 5 wild horses pulling a chariot is a good example of how the senses and mind pull the body around after them. Each of the horses represents one of the material senses, trying to race off and unite with a particular sense object. They're all pulling to unite themselves with an endless variety of sensual experiences. These senses are hooked up to the mind, which can be represented by the reins. The driver represents intelligence, the chariot represents the body, while the passenger represents the individual spirit soul or self, you, who has been taken for a very wild ride in the material body. The great saint Prahlad Maharaj has clearly pointed out that there are only 6 enemies in life, and that they are all within. They are the uncontrolled mind, being pulled along by the 5 senses. Anyone who imagines enemies apart from this is surely in ignorance and does not see things as they really are. Let's take the example of 2 people desiring the same thing. The eyes of both people see an object that they would like to have. Unfortunately, there's only one roll of toilet paper or one pacifier, and so, because both want to experience the same pleasure, then conflict and ill feeling arises. Whether it is 2 individuals or 2 nations, then the same principle is there. Whenever we lust over objects of the senses, and the object that sense tells us to experience is not given, then frustration and anger are not very far away. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna instructs us that, quote, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Unquote. Now, let's have a look at just what makes up that material body that is covering you. There is absolutely no foundation whatsoever to support the theory that life has arisen from an accidental combination of chemicals in the distant past. Why? Because right now scientists have all the chemicals available that they claim have created life by accident, yet they are unable to create life consciously by combining the very same chemicals. Since any attempt at combining these chemicals purposefully and consciously does not create life and never has created life, then we have to say that there is no possibility that life was ever produced in the distant past by the accidental coming together of the very same chemicals. Unfortunately, many people are of the opinion that life does come from matter. They conclude that at a certain point of combining chemicals, then life begins. So, what does actually make up the human body? There are 5 basic elements. They are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And then there are the 3 subtle elements of mind, intelligence, and false ego. The body is made up of many things like blood, mucus, urine, stool, bile, pus, hair, bones, nails, skin, fat, gastric acids, tendons, sinew, cartilage, nerves, and much more. About 96% of your body is made up of major components. These are oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and hydrogen. They make up the majority of your body, but they are not you. Minor components make up about 4% of your body. We can list these as calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium. About 0.01% is made up of trace elements: copper, zinc, selenium, molybdenum, fluorine, iodine, manganese, cobalt, iron, lithium, strontium, aluminium, silicon, lead, vanadium, arsenic, and bromine. If all these elements have now been reduced to various separate components in their separate jars, then there would be absolutely nothing left of your human body. This means that if a person is saying that he is his body, then what part would he be? What jar would the self be in? The actual component value of your human body is only about $7.50. In the ancient yoga text, we are taught there are 8,400,000 different types of bodies we can take birth in. They include microbes, insects, reptiles, birds, plants, aquatics, human beings, demigods, and so on. They are all different apartments that facilitate the endless desires and wanderings of all the living entities who are in this material atmosphere. But none of them are permanent. You have to leave them all behind when they break down and die. While living under the influence of this material energy, most people conclude that they are the body they are in. Some people perform all kinds of clown-like works to gain applause and acceptance from others. They may spend many years trying to achieve the perfection of their work, trying to fit in, trying to be loved and accepted, while not realizing the real temporary situation that they have been born into. But ultimately, all their attempts are in vain. Cruel death appears like a thief in the night to destroy their bodies and take all their so-called achievements away. They end up empty and with nothing, not even knowing where their action or karma and their desires will take them. Life is a completely separate element than matter, and, in fact, it is what animates matter. Our situation is very clearly pointed out by Lord Krishna as follows, quote, "The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can he be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting or pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same." Unquote. Metabolism. Every 5 to 7 years, all the cells in your body are completely renewed or replaced. As you breathe air, eat food, absorb sunlight, and drink water, your body's old cells leave your body through sweat, stool, hair, urine, nails, skin, breath, and so on. However, you, the soul, always remain the same. You never change. Even though your body is constantly changing, you, the self, never change. The eternal spirit soul or self sits in the material body as the all-pervading consciousness of the body. You, the soul, or person who is using that body, are eternal, and you will never cease to exist. In the ancient yoga text Bhagavad Gita, a definitive understanding of our real essence is clearly given by Lord Krishna as follows. Quote, "Know that that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul." Unquote. Then Lord Krishna goes on to say, quote, "For the soul there is never birth nor death, nor, having once been, does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain." Unquote. As your body starts to get older, you often still feel the same as when it was younger. This experience can help you understand your own constant awareness of your own existence, while your body changes from young to old over time. Nature itself demonstrates constantly how matter transformed from one state to another over time. We can use the example of how an apple can turn into a glass of milk. After the apple is processed and consumed, its particles are manipulated by metabolism, and some of those particles are eventually expelled as waste. That waste may be further broken down after being eaten by worms, which, in turn, may be consumed by a bird. The bird's metabolism will then eventually expel particles of the worm as waste, perhaps onto grass, which a cow may be eating. The cow's body then converts those same particles into milk that is extracted from the cow to be sold and consumed, and the whole cycle continues almost infinitely over and over again in different ways and forms. All of these particles that are making up your body today were making up something else in the past. They have all been recycled multiple times over and over again. In this way, we can understand we are not the body that we find ourselves in. Life is a separate element from matter and can enter matter and influence it. However, matter cannot enter life and influence it. Following are 8 basic characteristics that can help us understand the difference between matter under the influence life and matter by itself. 1. Matter influenced by the element life is characterized by metabolism, whereas in matter by itself there is never any metabolism. You'll never find dirt metabolizing food like a living human body does. 2. Matter influenced by life will react to external and internal heat and cold, whereas matter by itself does not. Matter by itself doesn't try to cool itself down when it's hot, or try to get warm when it's in a cold place. 3. Matter influenced by the element life grows from within by an intricate construction process involving extensive chemical change, like an embryo in the womb, while matter by itself grows by external accumulation, involving no change or only very simple changes in chemical construction, like water swelling up a sponge. 4. Matter influenced by life displays a highly organized and sophisticated flow of matter, while matter by itself displays a simple and unsophisticated flow of matter. 5. Matter influenced by the element life is capable of reproduction. However, matter by itself, in this case a dead bird, is incapable of reproduction. 6. Matter influenced by life strives to adapt to changing situations and actively resist obstacles, whereas matter by itself can be characterized by passive resistance to changes or obstacles, like a rock in a flowing stream. 7. Matter under the influence of life is capable of exhibiting self-induced movements, while matter by itself moves only when influenced by an external agent or by natural forces, such as a strong wind blowing things away. And lastly, matter influenced by the element life is characterized by complex molecular, cellular, and bodily arrangements that has specific form and function, and complex organizational interaction. But matter by itself is characterized by molecular arrangements that are either lacking in specific form and function, or are very simple, with very little actual interaction, such as these water molecules. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains our situation. Quote, "As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change." Unquote. Samsara is known as the wheel of birth, disease, old age, and death, on which all living beings in this material world are caught on. Every living entity is an individual soul, and each is changing his or her body at every moment, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as an adolescent, sometimes as an old man or woman. Yet, the same spirit soul is always there and does not undergo any change. The individual soul finally changes the body at death and transmigrates to another body. As mentioned earlier, you, the soul, can enter into any type of body, as a male, as a female, as an animal, a bird, or an aquatic, a reptile, an insect, or even a tree, just according to the desires and karma you have created in this or your previous bodies. There are only two things that keep us from leaving this material energy and returning to our original situation. We leave one body and are born into another body time and time again, based on our individual actions and our desires. These two things alone are forcing us to repeatedly take birth, and just according to our desires and karma, we take birth in a particular species, not always as a human. This cycle is known as samsara, or the wheel of birth, disease, old age, and death, and most of us have been on it for a very long time, looking for whatever it is we individually think will make us happy. Am I my mind? You can understand how you use your mind by equating it to a computer or a tape recording machine. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's good enough to help us see how we can watch our minds, much like we would view a monitor or a screen or information recorded onto a tape. Our five senses are continuously feeding the mind information about whatever they are linking up to. This information is stored as subconscious memory, something like information that is stored from the desktop screen onto the hard drive of a computer. In other words, as our senses unite with the various sense objects, then that information is recorded by the conscious mind, and then goes into the subconscious mind, like information from your computer is stored onto the hard drive, or like information that is recorded onto a tape. The senses can also be seen like a continuous recording of information onto the tape-like mind. At any time, you can rewind the recorded tape, your subconscious mind, to look at the information that has been recorded onto it. For example, imagine there is a big juicy navel orange in your hand. It's easy to do because you've seen one many times in the past, and so it has already been recorded onto your subconscious memory. Next, imagine your thumb starting to peel the orange, and maybe the feeling of the pulp under the thumbnail. Once again, this is not hard to imagine because it is already there in the subconscious. Then, we have the tearing sound of the flesh, which has in the past been recorded by your ears onto the mind. It's not new to you. Next, it's not hard to imagine the smell of an orange, because vapors that dispersed whenever you peeled one in the past have already been stored onto your subconscious mind. In the same way, it's not hard to imagine the taste of an orange. This little exercise can bring out a lot of points about the way in which we see ourselves. First, ask yourself, who is it that was watching the different sensual experiences of the orange as they were brought up? Second, the fact that you can imagine the orange in your hand means that the same you, probably when you were a lot younger, had the original experience of touching an orange in the past. So, what you can say to yourself is that, I know I exist now, and I know that I must have existed in the past, otherwise I would have no memory of that orange today. Third, a further point here is to see how if any of the senses were not working, then are you ultimately affected? You can go through each of the senses in turn and understand that you still exist with or without them. We can see our senses are always feeding our mind with a constant flow of information. This information will often distract you from remembering your real purpose in life and who you really are. Whenever someone is thinking that they are their body, mind, and senses, they will allow their five senses to latch onto any one of the endless varieties of material sense objects in the attempt to find happiness through that body. The senses are always stimulating the mind and trying to lead it with their input. They are relentless in their quest to latch onto something, and oftentimes they will see different ways of trying to enjoy the very same thing. Because our senses are very limited in what they perceive, then we can never trust them to be a medium for seeing the absolute truth. Rather, we should train the senses in activities that help us advance in spiritual life. We can use the tongue for tasting food that has been offered to the Lord, and chanting the holy names of the Lord. The ears in hearing the saintly persons talking about the Lord, and hearing the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. The eyes for reading sacred verses, and looking at the form of the Lord and his devotees. The nose for smelling the incense and flowers that have been offered to the Lord, and the sense of touch for chanting the Lord's names on our beads, and touching the deity and the body of the pure devotees or lovers of God. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, quote, "The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. As a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, so even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence." Unquote. If you can imagine you sitting on the bank of a river, witnessing the different thoughts and desires drifting past, then this can help in understanding that you are not your mind. You can watch the thoughts come and go as they are replaced with new thoughts. Like a silent witness, you can separate yourself from the activities of your mind and realize that the mind is simply a tool that you are using to help function in this material world with. Matter is that substance that you, the element life, uses to move through this finite universe. Matter can never create life. Rather, it is by the influence of life that matter appears to be living. Without the presence of the individual spirit soul or spark of life, matter simply remains in waiting as the usable medium for the individual soul to dwell in this material world through. You are not matter and never will be. You are an eternally existing, individual person using matter to experience this temporary material world through. Part 2 of the Science of Identity deals with understanding our position in this world and how we are dominated over by social forces, by natural forces, by other living entities, and by our own body and mind. Understanding our position here can help us choose a path in life that is more in harmony with the laws of life and nature by giving us the wisdom to see that we are not the owners and controllers of everything around us. This consciousness is absolutely necessary to advance on any real spiritual level. The ancient yoga texts point to our very small individual presence in this immense universe. They describe numerous planets and worlds where life is abundant and is found everywhere, in one form or another. The vastness of this particular universe that we find ourselves in is known to be very difficult to understand. Just according to our individual desires and actions, we get to take birth again and again on one of the multitudes of worlds within this universe. But, regardless of where we find ourselves, we can appreciate the simultaneous vastness and minuteness of this material universe. From the incredibly vast distances of space, down to the minute smallest of one leaf, we can perceive so much order and structure, allowing it all to work, and begin to appreciate, in a small way, the incredible intelligence that governs it. The details and working mechanisms that are found inside one small leaf, let alone your own body, show intelligent planning and harmony on a microscopic scale. From the biggest to the smallest places of this universe, life is to be found in one form or another. Whether we travel outwards or inwards, we can know that the structure of everything that we perceive is based on atomic particles that are virtually impossible to understand completely. These atomic building blocks for the material worlds are making up all the varieties of forms that we see around us. From a hard diamond to a soft leaf, to a gigantic planet, it's all the same stuff. It is known as the material energy, and you, the soul, are allowed to try and find happiness through it if you want to. However, it is not recommended. Lord Brahma, the architect of this universe, glorifies as supreme in this way. Quote, "He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that is scattered throughout the universe, at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore." Unquote. We are being constantly dominated over by natural forces and social forces, including other living entities and our own body and mind. Let's look at a few examples. Natural forces are those actions of nature that we have no control over. Sometimes there is excessive rain, so that flooding occurs. One minute everything is dry and fine, and the next minute there is a flood of water washing everything away. Then there are droughts, caused by absolutely no rain at all. When there is a drought, there is little food, and famine can occur, and many people can become so hungry that they may even die of starvation. The weather itself lets us know that we are dominated over. Snowfall can lead to many difficulties that we have absolutely no control over. There are tornadoes which ravage and destroy everything in their path. They can easily tear a large house apart, and they often kill people and many animals. Then there are earthquakes that shake the ground violently and can devastate a city, killing many people. They are oftentimes associated with volcanic actions somewhere else. Whenever a volcano erupts, people are forced to flee the area, and their homes are often destroyed. There are tsunamis and tidal waves, which flood inland coastal regions and have been known to kill hundreds of thousands of people. They are often caused by earthquakes under the ocean floor, which generate large, powerful waves that are pushed towards the land. Other living entities, including social forces, dominate us in so many ways. There are microscopic living entities that can bring diseases, which can make us sick or even kill our bodies. There are all kinds of insects, like mosquitoes, which can spread diseases like malaria and dengue fever. Then, there are other humans and animals who might want to bully us or hurt us. We are dominated by social forces, which are usually enforced by the police and the military. The laws then enforced are in place so that society has some order. If we choose to ignore these laws, then we may risk hurting ourselves or others. And could be arrested and even taken before a court that will define our punishment and possibly even send us to jail. The actions of other human beings can also dominate us. The killing of innocent people for political reasons is also another example of how other living entities want to dominate us. Then, there are all the local government laws and rules that we are required to obey. Conflict between countries can come about when one country wants to take over or dominate another. This leads to the risk of all-out warfare that generally kills thousands and sometimes millions of people. All these things are just a small look at how we are dominated over by other living entities. Your own body and mind are also dominating you. Birth into this world is very difficult. You spend 9 months in the womb while your body develops, and then you experience the helplessness of birth. You have absolutely no control at this time. Disease is also generally very miserable. The body we have can be inflicted by many different types of diseases that can cause us much pain and suffering. Then there is old age, which lets us know how we are dominated over by time itself. Our bodies start to slow down and break down, and it is embarrassing for the living entity to experience this. Our real position is eternal and youthful, yet we are controlled by these material bodies, which are temporary and get old. It is not natural for you, the eternal spark of life, to be in this condition. Finally, the body dies. This experience that we are forced to go through is generally painful, especially if we don't even know who we are. The mind or subtle body can cause a living entity no end of pain and anxiety. Many people often try to cloud over the pain the mind causes with alcohol or drugs. People's minds can cause them to appear quite mad, and can put them into a very depressed and hellish condition of life. As long as we are taking on material bodies, then we will be dominated over by the laws of material nature in which we have decided to exist. Anyone who has a body will find that attached to that body are 4 defects. 1. It is sure to commit mistakes. We all experience so many accidents and mishaps in this life, with things happening unintentionally and without us even wanting them to. 2. Is invariably put into illusion. Looking at this image, we can very clearly see a square shape, and when we look at this image, we can clearly see a round, circular shape. However, if we turn the circle to the side, then we can see that the truth behind the 2 shapes is actually a cylinder shape, which, depending on how we look at it, will appear as a square or a circle, yet it is not actually either. Three, limited by imperfect senses. This man could not perceive the approaching shark with his senses, even though it was right next to him. We cannot smell anywhere near the range a dog can, or even hear half as well as a deer can, or see with the clarity of vision that an eagle possesses, or taste the variety of rotting foods that a pig can. Our senses are limited. 4. We have the tendency to cheat. The tendency to cheat exhibits in many different ways, from cheating in gambling, or in a relationship, or even to progress academically in this world. So, with these 4 defects, one cannot hope to understand perfect knowledge without help from somewhere else. Whenever we wish to travel somewhere, then we generally have a clear idea of the route that we will be taking. For example, in Australia, if we want to travel from Melbourne to Perth, then there is a clear and precise road to follow. However, there are many other roads leading out of Melbourne that can take us to all kinds of destinations that are nowhere near Perth. These roads may take us a part of the way, or even totally the wrong way. There are some roads that may even eventually bring us back towards Perth, but they've taken us in a very roundabout way. Logic dictates that if I had simply followed the directions of the prescribed route, then I would have saved myself a lot of time and energy. By adopting the false attitude of so-called independence, we can be put into a situation that we didn't even want to be in. Our spiritual path is like that. We may be given very clear and straight directions for achieving our goal of love for God. However, we may wander down the many side streets that distract us. These distractions can lead us to forget the original direction, and often bring us to the lower and more troublesome qualities of life that we don't even really want. Because of these distractions, then we lose sight of the original path we wanted to be on, and we become lost in this material world. So, to stay on the straight and narrow, so to speak, we need to come to the humble point of at least realizing that I need help. Krishna informs us how to begin accepting this help. Quote, "Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you, because he has seen the truth." Unquote. From the very beginning of our lives, we are taught or shown how to survive in this world. First, our parents and older siblings. then our teachers at school, and so on. Learning how to eat, personal hygiene, how to drive a car, how to perform in music, sports, and academically, all require teachers or someone that knows the subject matter well enough to educate us. This same rule applies even more so to our spiritual education. The word guru means the remover of darkness or ignorance. It also refers to a person who is heavily infused with love for God. The problem we may face is, how do I know who is a real guru or lover of God? We all have that iconic view of the disciple-spiritual master relationship from past descriptions. But how do I find someone who will not cheat me in this modern age? Fortunately, there are many guidelines for finding such a person. The first is that he or she has a spiritual master and is coming in a long line of spiritual masters, originating with God Himself. Such a spiritual master does not exploit their students and disciples for any material gain. They are self-satisfied in their own pure love for God, and therefore do not require anything from anyone. They are also a transparent medium for the absolute truth, and anything they tell us is confirmed by past saintly persons, by Shastra or Scripture, and by the Lord in the heart. Such a person is also known as a charya or a teacher by example, and does not contradict what they are saying. They do not say one thing and do another. Such a person is never elected or appointed, but rather their position is seen by others because of their personal spiritual advancement. And such a person cannot be recognized by any external appearance, like clothing or hairstyle, and so on. A bona fide spiritual master is known when they speak the absolute truth, as one who can change a person from a lover of this material world to a lover of God, and is motivated by a great compassion and love to relieve the suffering of all living beings. In the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, quote, "And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, and that they are in me and are mine." Unquote. So, to realize that I am dominated over, and that I am not all-powerful, and that I need help from a source that is greater than myself, is to realize my real position in this material world. Part 3 of the study of identity deals with our function. If we see ourselves as being eternal living entities, then a practical question would be, what is our eternal position? What should we be doing for eternity? We all have certain natural qualities, which are always a part of us. First of all, we are happiest when we love, and are being loved. We also have a natural desire to serve someone or something. If we're not serving our own body, mind, and senses, then we serve others. For example, the parents serve the children serve the parents. The boss serves the workers, and the workers serve the boss in turn. People in general serve the government, and the government serves the people, and on it goes. In serving another individual, it is understood that we may not necessarily love our boss or the government, but, including with loving another individual, is this natural desire to serve as well. This is called loving service, and it is the natural function of each and every one of us, whether we believe it or not, whether we are acting on it or not. When this natural loving service is directed towards pleasing the Supreme Being, then we are acting naturally, and this is called Sanatana Dharma, or eternal loving function. The problem in this world is that everyone we give our love to eventually disappears, so we are left empty again. The loving service we give others in this world is always going to be eroded by time. It is like trying to love a bubble that is going to pop and disappear on us. It's actually a very foolish thing to do. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us, quote, "If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or a little water, I will accept it." Unquote. Of course, it is not wrong to love others in this world. We should. But that love should be based on the correct premise that if we first place our love onto the Supreme Lord, then automatically that love will flow towards all other living entities. It's like watering the root of a tree, which can be equated to placing our love onto the Lord. The roots then carry the water towards all the leaves of the tree, which can be compared to all the other living entities. There is very little value in placing our love onto one or two other living entities or leaves, because that body we are loving will eventually dry up and fall away. If not, then our own body will finish in time. So, in this world, we are like a fish out of water. We are eternal, and yet here we are, in this temporary environment. You can try and give the fish that is flapping out of the water all kinds of material comfort. But, no matter what we offer him, he can only be happy if we put him back into the water. In the same way, we are all eternal spiritual living entities. Yet we find ourselves, due to our independent free will, trying to exist in a temporary material environment that is governed by time. Just like the fish out of water, we are in the wrong place. It's not possible to find eternal happiness in the temporary material energy. Our natural position and our natural function is to be simply rendering unconditional, loving service to the Lord. Although God is one, he has many names that are based on his unlimited qualities. He is called Jehovah because he is all-powerful. God is also called Allah, which means that he is all-compassionate. He is called Krishna, meaning the all-attracted person who is completely complete in all things. Actual religion means to understand God and to develop our love for him. These labels, like Hindu, Muslim, Christian or Buddhist, these are designations of the body. Actual religion is different. Actual religion means to understand God and to develop your love for him. It doesn't matter through which religion you reawaken your dormant love for him. Love for that Supreme Personality is our natural and eternal constitutional position, and any religion that enables a person to that position must be considered as a perfect religion. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, quote, "Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear." Unquote. There are many different activities we can do to help reawaken our dormant love for the Lord, like reading and hearing about the Lord and remembering his pastimes. With musical instruments or in beads, there's no set rules. We can be meditating on and chanting the holy names of the Lord. In this way, we can associate with the Lord via his holy names, which are all purifying. In everything we do, we can make it an offering to the Lord with love. To always remember the Lord and never forget the Lord are the only two requirements for redeveloping our love for him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us the easiest process for approaching the Lord by teaching that, quote, "In this age of chaos, confusion, quarrel, and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is to chant the names, chant the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way." Unquote. Congregational chanting of the names of the Lord has been prescribed by the Lord himself as the most sublime practice to reawaken love for God. Its practice washes away whatever keeps us from him. Lord Chaitanya instructs us, quote, "All glories to the congregational chanting and singing of God's names, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years together and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This congregational chanting of the names of God is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious." Unquote.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Lord Chaitanya says, quote, "O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names, like Krishna, Govinda, etc. In these transcendental names, you have invested all of your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of your kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by chanting your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them." Unquote. The great saint Haridas Thakur has instructed us that no knowledge is as pure as the holy names of the Lord. No vow is as powerful as the holy name. No meditation in the world is like the holy name. No philosophy brings a result like the holy name. No renunciation is greater than the holy name. Nothing will ever be equal to the holy name. Therefore, the conclusion of all yogic literature is that one should strive to reawaken one's eternal, loving association with the Supreme Lord, and focus that as the goal of one's life. Then, one can be truly happy, even in this world, and that in this age, the easiest and recommended way to achieve that goal is through the chanting of the holy names of the Lord.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
The consciousness in which we can chant. Quote, "One should chant the holy names of the Lord in a humble state of mind, feeling oneself to be lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others, never desiring respect in return. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly." Unquote.
Hare Krishna,